welcome to the Max 6 Community Connections radio show and podcast with your host, Jennifer Burwell and Kyle McIntosh. Max 6 builds better communities where people and businesses thrive. We are broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center in Tempe, Arizona, and will be shining a light on the incredible stories of businesses we work with and how they are serving our broader community. And here is this week's Community Connection. Let's start with what's up, Jen. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. Good to see you. On today's show, we have a fun guest joining us from outside the direct Max 6 community and a member of our community at large by way of the Tempe Chamber, David Burckhard, who is the Executive Director of the Valley of the Sun YMCA Tempe facility. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us on, or me on, not us. But
yeah, welcome. So I guess first, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get from there to where you're sitting right here today?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on, shining a light on the why. We've been doing a lot during this pandemic, as a lot of people have been. And but for me, I grew up in New York, probably 40 minutes north of New York City, Westchester County, and I was there first 18 years of my life, and then I went to Springfield College, which is in Western Massachusetts. If you don't know, Springfield College invented basketball.
Really?
Yeah, so kind of a cool little factoid. And actually, it used to be called the YMCA Training School when it opened in 1885. So there's a little connection there that is a little foreshadowing. So,
wow.
Yeah. But I went there to be a physical education teacher. It was between there or Hartford University. And if I was going into business and following in my dad's footsteps, I was going to go to Hartford. And if I wanted to do PE, I was going to go to Springfield. And I chose Springfield, but then switched to business. So go figure. Spent 4 years there. And stayed on for an extra year. I got my MBA in nonprofit management. And so, I kind of combined, the background of the why that's at Springfield College. If you don't know, the YMCA has a Hall of Fame, and it's located there too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I got some internship opportunities. There was a Y Club on campus. In my senior year, I just like to go travel. And I did that through alternative spring break trips in college. And so excuse for me to get into the Y at college was to go on cheap spring break trips. And so my senior year, I should back up. My freshman year, I went to actually San Diego, being an East Coast boy, that was like a brand new thing. And we actually learned about something very relevant today, which is border issues. And so that was my freshman year, and we even got to stay in, it's called Casa de YMCA. So if you phonetically say YMCA YMCA, Casa de YMCA, it was actually a place for, this was in Tijuana, Mexico. So we spent 2 days of our trip down in Tijuana, and we stayed there, and it was a place for if, at the border, if parents and their kids got separated, they would send the kids actually to the Casa de YMCA until they were reunited.
Wow.
Which is something relevant, very relevant going on right now. And so it's kind of wild that happened, 10 years ago at this point, or maybe more, but my math isn't great. But so that was my first kind of step into the Y and how, the Y can serve a community in different manners. And then my senior year, I co-chaired a trip to London, England, through the Y Club. It was a YMCA history trip, and the whole purpose of that trip was to kind of, the YMCA started in London, England, in 1844. A guy named Sir George Williams started it, and he's actually he's knighted, Sir George Williams, and he's actually buried right now with all the kings and queens of England in what's the major church there? I'm trying to think.
Westminster Abbey.
Yes, yeah. So you got all the major kings and queens, and then you got this guy that started the Y, and so that's how important he was to,
wow,
London and England's development during that time, and so. Again, I went there, for a fun trip, but I learned a lot too, co-chairing that trip. So that was my senior year, and then I stayed on. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Probably, 2011 was right after the housing market crash. And, I was kind of punting down a year by staying on. And my wife was a year behind me, so it was an excuse to stay on. My now wife
Sure.
was still at school, so it was an excuse to stay on for an extra year. And so got my MBA nonprofit management. So, I got this YMCA background already. I got this business background. We're a nonprofit, but we are a business.
Yeah.
And then I got this PE background too, original interest. So, physical education and movement. And so, just literally, I thought the YMCA would be the best opportunity for me to get a job, when I meshed all those things together. So that's kind of how I started.
And here you are today.
And here I am today. I'm looking at my watch. That doesn't have the year on it, but about 8 years later, still working at the Y. And so
That's awesome. Well, there's a lot to unpack in there. So let me.
right. That's why I figured I'd break.
No, thank you. That's,
Yeah.
So just relevant to what you were talking about with the travel and hey, this is a working trip, but getting to experience a new place and learning. What Jen and I both did prior to when I started Max 6, Jen was actually my boss at the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And one of their fundraising arms, Team in Training, where we'd go and there would be groups of people training for marathons, triathlons, long distance events, and fundraising for LLS. And we'd go. I mean, it'd be these work trips to a marathon, but you'd be in San Francisco or Ireland or wherever you were. It's like, well, when you're there, you're there. You get to experience the city and learn
Right.
these things. And so I just sit here and it must have been a really cool experience to not just learn for the sake of learning, but like, man, you have this like you've been to the place where the history started for this organization that you are still with 8 years later. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredibly awesome. Especially we just this is our I think 2019 was our 175th year the Y. So
Wow.
and I've been to the original YMCA. So like that's pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I was just reflecting as you were talking, and I don't like a week ago or so about the amazing ability for young people like college students to get involved in nonprofit organizations that also have that travel component. Because like we were all talking about, we got to see all these great places in the world for really cheap, and like I mean, Kyle and I were getting paid to go to these places and also experience. And I was reminiscing now that we can't really travel of like all the places that we got to go and what a great opportunity it is. And so I kind of hope that for all college students to be able to experience that on some level. Combined with the education piece, it just helps, I think, shape your worldview of the world so much bigger than just you.
Totally.
But I do have a question, and it's a really basic question, so
Mhm.
forgive me, because I've always known about the YMCA, but I don't fully understand like all of the things that you do. And you talked about the YMCA place, which is really interesting by the border. But like, what are all of the things that the YMCA does to support the community?
Yeah, no, great question. And I would say that unfortunately, I think a lot of people are in the same boat as you, and a lot of people view us as a gym and swim, and there has been that brand on us, in the '90s and things like that, and as we were building facilities during that time. And we're so much more than that. Locally here. Oh, and I'll start off by saying too, every YMCA serves their community differently. So that's imperative to know. So, my first set of Ys I worked for were in the Boston area, and they serve their community differently than out here in Arizona. So for instance, Arizona, we have a big program around safety around water. And not that Boston doesn't, we taught swim lessons there too. But here it has a little bit more of an edge to it because if you don't know, Arizona is top 4 states in the country with drownings, unfortunately. And we're actually seeing a spike right now because, this year because people haven't been able to go do swim lessons.
Oh,
But with that said, of those 4 states, the other ones are California, Florida, and Texas. All 3 of those states have coastlines, and we don't have a coastline. So we're building the pools, and we got to protect the children. So that's just a for instance in how Arizona specifically is serving our community. We do. We do youth sports, before and after school programming. Right now, school's out, but we're in session with our kids. We have a preschool, and then there's a huge health and wellness component as well. And so, our site here in Tempe was built like 30 something years ago. And so there's a lot of folks who, Tempe as being one of the first suburbs, moved here and they went to the brand new Y. And they're still there. They've raised their kids, and now they're coming to basketball games with their grandkids, which is really cool.
that's very cool.
So to answer your question, Jennifer, it's every community gets served in a different capacity. I would even say there's little differences between Tempe and Chandler YMCA's and how we what we focus on, and how we serve our kids, or our families. But it goes back to the Casa de Yimca. That's how, in Tijuana, Mexico, how they're going to serve their community and how to best serve them. So yeah.
I want to go back to something you said in the beginning because it's just so relevant to what you're talking about. And I mean, first of all, going community to community and asking the question, what do you need, community? And we can come up with some cool, creative ways to help serve that need. I mean, that's so interesting. And of course, it makes sense that I heard something, Arizona's the only place on earth that has so many swimming pools that they create their own atmospheres at times that we create our own atmosphere at times throughout the year. So of course it makes sense that there'd be a list that we'd be high up on, and here's something that we can serve. And you said something early on about you were talking a little bit about nonprofits and business, and one of the things that we did early on with Max Six separately is started a nonprofit called Conscious Capitalism Arizona. And the way that I very simply describe that is for profit and nonprofit is just a tax distinction. And so, how do you have the heart of a nonprofit with the horsepower of a for profit? Pair those two things together and ask the question exactly how you phrase it: is how can I serve you? How can I best serve my stakeholders, my customers, my community? And in doing that, to the best of my ability, will be long term more sustainable, profitable, able to help more people, able to bring kids in where their grandparents have been here before. I mean, it's an amazing thing.
Totally, and it's actually one of the reasons I love what you guys are doing here at Max Six. I've read up on you guys. You guys have been, the talk of the town in Tempe. I would say for the past several years, and so at least being new to Tempe, like I view you guys as that, and yeah, it's how are we going to best serve our community? That's the question.
All communities have been disrupted, to say the least, in the
Right.
last number of months. At best. And so how does it work where I mean it's an obvious time where okay, everybody's going through something. We probably have to re-ask the question, how do we best serve our community now? But I imagine from time to time things come up where this is sort of always changing. The demographics, the needs of the community are changing. How do you guys look at that and assess?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of it, to your question about assessing it, I have an advisory board at my Y, and then where my Y is part of 15 branches. So we're called the Valley of the Sun YMCA, and our branch serves the Tempe community, and actually some in North Chandler and West Mesa as well. Just from where we're situated in on Rural Road there, and so our branch is has an advisory board for our community, And so we get people that, try to work or live in the community or have even just a passion for the Tempe Y because maybe they grew up there and, they were helped at one point or whatever it may be. Well, we have an advisory board that helps me get plugged into the community about what are the needs and, where are resources needed and how can we best serve that. And the Y is just really a vehicle for that to help execute it. That's how I best put it. But I rely on my board a lot for that assessing.
Very cool.
So I know I've heard loosely that the Y has played a really critical role through the pandemic. And I know that, we're all, those of us with young children have been trying to manage working from home and kids and schools closing and not closing. So what have you guys been doing? What have you been up to? Have you been able to operate? What's been happening during the pandemic for you?
Yeah, being an organization that has is so versatile and has so many branches and arms, we never actually had to close at all during the pandemic. We closed certain operations like health and wellness and sports and stuff like that on St. Patrick's Day. The St. Patrick's Day will always be seared into my mind. On St. Patrick's Day, we closed a lot of our operations, and but we never closed our door for emergency childcare services. So we had a ton of families, that would drop off their kids. They'd be in scrubs and they're about to go to the hospitals to go work, pull a 10-hour shift or something like that. Grocery store, people that work at the grocery stores, stuff like that. So when the pandemic, everything first shut down, that's what we offered, emergency childcare services. And we got some partnership from the state to do that. Now, while it didn't cover 100% of expenses, it was sure helpful. But also we, at that time there was no gatherings of 10 or more. So our ratios were 1-9 with staff and kids to help with that. And so that means staff costs are going to go up as well. So that was something I was really proud of. Really proud of my teammates. Really proud of my staff. We had some program directors that might typically teach swim lessons that had to get into childcare. And, we gave an exceptional level of childcare services. And it was different and it was really cool. And we had a sports director, running essentially a sports clinic for the kids. And it was like a high quality tournament, during like emergency childcare services where, it's a bleak time. And, just to help keep these kids, distracted in a good way, and being kids, while being safe and clean. And we had staff just going right behind any of our groups, just cleaning the room that they were just in. And we'd have stamps on the kids' hands, and every 10 minutes we'd reapply stamps, and so they had to go wash their hands off. So we knew that they washed their hands. So we got creative in what we were doing.
That's smart.
Yeah, and that's probably I've been working at the Y over 8 years now, and that's probably those several weeks immediately after we shut down, probably the most proud I've been to work for the Y and an organization ever. So
it's amazing. You and I know Allie Anderson now, and hearing from her about, she'd just be exhausted at the end of the day,
right?
Because everybody's sort of on, right, and having to figure things out, and there's so many moving pieces, and then the amazing responsibility to be able to watch these kids for people that are absolutely needed where they need to be, whether at hospitals or grocery stores. And I'd hear or see, I'd be messaging, hey, do you guys want to hang out this weekend? No, Allie's just got to crash, she's just exhausted. And so it's it's got to feel, I can imagine that you would feel so many things at the same time, this sense of pride and also this sort of constant sense of movement of all right, what's next? How are we going to do this? And so, my kids haven't gone and taken the opportunity to go to the Y during this time, but I have been so hugely appreciative of what you guys are doing. It's been incredible to see and hear again right now.
Yeah, well, thank you, and you're spot on. And the one, if you're gonna have a plus side with doing all this, is that we were closed on weekends for the first time in a while, so that was really a time to recharge and spend with my own family. So
So I have a question that comes to mind through all of this. How did you maintain your staff culture or morale? Because I think offering the service, like we were just talking about, it is really important. I know our school, my kids go to a Montessori school in Tempe, and they were trying to figure out what to do. Do we close? Do we stay? And there were parents who would stand up and say, "I'm a police officer. I work at the hospital. I'm grocery store. Like I still have to go to work. What's going to happen to my kids?" And it was super emotional. But I also know on the staff side, there was a lot of fear about the unknown and what's going to happen. And if I get sick, and I'm just always so curious about company culture and leadership in these moments. So is there something that sticks out to you on how everyone kind of kept up morale and kept going, I guess?
yeah, it's a lot of coffee and pizza. I'd say. No, no, that was those are the frills that were no brainers for our staff. But our staff were working, as you alluded to it. We were working long hours. Not something, not that we're not built for it, but some of these folks, have been working in childcare for 7 or 8 hours in a day, and so strategic breaks for them. And I would say one thing that I'm just so, I don't say this often, but blessed to be here in the Valley of the Sun YMCA is our culture here prior to the pandemic has been incredible. Uh, just the love of the love for the why that the staff have is just off the charts. And I've never, previous whys I've worked for, that has not been the case. And so, if you want to say we're prepared in some regards, we were, and just like, but now we do have scars, right? We have these scars that only, my program directors at my branch know about me, and it's been tough. There's been laughing, there's been crying, and but it was to help serve our community, and that's what it comes down to at the very end. And so, but we have. At the time, we were having weekly staff rallies. Tonight, we actually have one now. They've gone to like probably biweekly or monthly, depending on. But we've had a lot to celebrate. Different departments have come through. Like when the pandemic first hit, our grant writing department just like rock stars. Finding resources for us. To help us live another month or another 6 months. Whatever it is, and so you'd be celebrating different things in different capacities. And but on a day-to-day basis, your folks at your branch that you worked with, it was a grind, but you love them, and you have these scars, but you all recognize your own scars, and so
It's interesting. Haven't thought of this exact analogy, but I've been trying to think about it a little bit until just now. But every once in a while, it's like you're existing in the world, but you've got a colander over you. And so you get the light shone on you, but not all the way through. It's coming through circles, but you get these moments every once in a while, whether for whatever reason, where that gets taken away and all the lights on, you can see everything, and it's the spotlight's on you. The pandemic is one of those things. And so to your statement that you were in some ways prepared for this because you had already been putting in place a good culture with people who wanted to be there and believed in the mission. I mean, in some ways, like you said, the scars and the tears and the happiness and the sadness, and it's going to bring out some of those things too that, oh, wow, we wouldn't have ever thought of this perhaps, but look, we can think through this and do it even better going forward because we were forced, the colander got taken away, all the lights on us, and guess what? We have this thing we can make even better. Is there anything that you've, completely shifted, done differently that maybe you won't even go back to? Have you learned any new things that bring value to the community or just how you run the organization?
yeah, I absolutely. I mean, if you're not learning from the past 7 months, it's like, what do you? You got to be learning because God forbid something like this were to ever happen again. But it's and for us here in Phoenix, we've like shut down, opened up, shut down, opened up, and so that's a different wrinkle that I know colleagues back east haven't had to deal with. It was one shutdown and one opening up, but the second time we did that, we were like, oh yeah, this is like another Monday, and like it wasn't great, but we were used to it. Like we knew what to do. And one thing I think the Y is really good at is building the plane while we're flying it. And that's one thing I think we do well on. And that has been what this pandemic has been. And so not that we've made all the right 1,000% decisions as anyone can,
Are there 1,000% right decisions? That's
right. But I would say, some things that we learned probably from this is efficiency. This was a great learning opportunity for my program directors, who are just relatively new to the Y, to learn other areas. So that's been a plus in professional development. I want them to be executive directors one day, and so now they know how to run childcare, and like that's a big plus. So
very cool. Are you guys a 501c6 or 3?
3.
3?
Yep.
Okay. And so what does that look like for the funding? You said your grant writers, right in the beginning, hey, got to work and they did an awesome job. But I mean, it's got to be a little bit different than it has been as people are essentially staying at home a lot more. What does that look like for you guys right now?
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack, that question. But I would say one thing that we did, when the pandemic first hit, we have tons of grants coming in tons of different communities for tons of different reasons. And so one of the first things we did that was very helpful, for our success, to get through this thing was any of the grants that we were already rewarded to us, or we received. We actually went back to all those grant funders and asked them, hey, can we reallocate these funds? And so I'll give an example. The Tempe Diablos. The Tempe Diablos are a wonderful supporter of the Y, have been for several years, and they typically, help fund us for safety around water and summer camp, and scholarships and things like that. We asked them if we can put it towards emergency childcare services, and I don't think we had any of our funders say no. It's something that they've already budgeted for. They know it's going to help the community for a greater good, and so for all of them, it's a no-brainer. And they're like, "Yeah, do what you got to do." But I would say that was like probably the number one thing we did right off the bat. That was huge for us. I know just for here at Tempe, I probably had 4 or 5 that I asked to reallocate, and they all said yes, no problem. So
that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're your stakeholders, and they've allocated these funds to what you're saying historically has been a need in the community. But guess what? Like that, it changed, and so that's awesome.
Right.
I'm really glad to hear that was such a relatively easy process to go through.
Right.
Yeah. Dave, where does your funding come from? Is it majority through grants, or is it a combination?
We so in the business aspect, we go out and get a lot of our revenue ourselves, with membership dues. And so, a membership due to the Y will help, pay for our lights, and pay for, the water bill, and pay for, salaries and stuff like that. It's all operational heavy. And then what's really nice when we fundraise money, and not a lot of nonprofits get to say this, when we fundraise money, it's typically about 100% of those dollars go right back into the community, because we have this great thing called membership that helps, pays for those things, like the nuts and bolts. And then when we raise $1, we give the dollar back out to the community. So I'm not going to knock any nonprofits at all, but like you see commercials and it says, 60% of the dollar goes towards what the cause is. Us, it's probably like 98 to 99%.
It's
go ahead, Pat.
I was just thinking, I mean, it's back to the for-profit, nonprofit. It's a business, right? And it's like, how do we reach the most amount of people? And so if it's 60%, it's like, well, maybe there's efficiency issues, or what is that 60% doing? But I mean, if you're able to basically be self-sustainable with the revenue that's coming in, and then turn 100% of it back into the community, that is really something to be proud of, and pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's a big machine, so it's good to be part of it for sure. And so we have grant funding. We have I run an annual campaign every year, And so, which is really great. When I started in 2018, I think we hit, when I walked in the door, we were at 53,000 for our annual campaign. And this past year we hit 108. So
Wow.
it's a tough time to ask people for money, but it's also like the most important time to ask people for money. And so you can't be bashful, when you're serving your community, and that's the approach we took. And we, I had supporters, make their, I had, supporters make their normal gift and then plus 2 or 3 in COVID relief, and so it I was super proud of our, talk about being proud of, different things during different times. That, fund development has been, something I'm passionate about because for the why, it directly impacts how much you can serve because of that. You have those membership dues covering, your operational costs and stuff like that. And so when you get to raise more money, it's just more money directly back into the community.
I'm sitting here feeling so good, and I am feeling that way because so okay, so we're going through the pandemic right now, and simultaneously, there's been so much divisiveness going on for various reasons.
Sure.
What was the difference between right after 9/11 when we had a big thing going on in the country, but it felt like everybody was coming together and wanting to support everybody? And what's making me feel so good about this conversation is these stories that you don't get to hear all the time in the news or for whatever reason, unless you sit down with David Burckhard or,
Right.
and have this conversation is, hey, people are people and we're all the same people as, 9 years ago as we are today. People just want to help. And so generally, people in the community will step up to do what they think is the right thing to do in the community, support the community, whether that's increased funding or reallocation of funds. Or, I mean, it's just making me feel so good to hear these stories of the community supporting the community. I'm really happy that that's going on and that you could sit here and make my week for sure.
Awesome.
Getting to
Yeah.
hear some really cool stories like that.
Yeah. One thing about the why is that we, the last 2 words in our mission statement are for all. And so, like, that's, economic status, race, religion, beliefs, anything. We're for everyone. And so I think that's a big part of, us not being into that, world and being in our own world of support. So,
You get to play outside of it, or
right,
yeah,
right, yeah.
I appreciate that. When we talked a couple weeks ago through the chamber meeting, you were talking about I think a run that was coming up,
Mhm.
and so curious about that and occasional things or like that you have going on as well.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, when we spoke on at our Tempe Chamber meeting, we were gearing up for our second annual Spooky Sprint 5K, which actually happened on Halloween weekend. We had to pivot this year because typically, a race is in person, and the responsible thing to do is not to do that, and so we pivoted to a virtual race, which was different, and it was unique, and it was very successful, and so people can sign up and do 3.1 miles wherever or whenever they wanted during that Halloween weekend. And we did tell people, hey, we're gonna the canal in Tempe runs right next to the Y. And so we told people, hey, we're going to be out there Saturday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. if you want to say hi, and we'll give you an elbow, bump or whatever. And so we had like 68 runners, not show up to the canal, but sign up. Many different groups help support us. We had, first race last year, we had 2 sponsors. We had 4 sponsors this year. And so we doubled our sponsors. We had more runners signed up. And so, that was one of those things wasn't sure if we should put the effort and energy into, just given the landscape. But my biggest thing is I didn't want to lose momentum for next year.
Sure.
And for it to be this, the second first annual Spooky Sprint 5K in 2021. And so I really wanted for it to happen. And it's a fun race because we encourage people to dress up. It's Halloween weekend. And so we had some few people come, dressed as Star Trek or skeleton outfit or whatever it may be. And
Nice.
it was still really fun. And, a 5K, I think, is a wonderful Y event. The Y, we're all about healthy living. And, so it raised funds for our childcare programs. And it was also a healthy living aspect and a family event at all in one. So yeah, we had the spooky sprint about 2 weeks ago at this point, almost. But it was really, I thought it was wildly successful for the time.
Are there things that you do throughout the year like that typically that?
Yeah. So that's probably one of our only fundraising events, I would say. Yeah. Every April we have what's called Healthy Kids Day. It's typically the last weekend in April. It's a little sneak peek into summer camp that will happen a few weeks later. And it's actually the one event that all YMCAs in the country do, is Healthy Kids Day. So we didn't get to have it this year, in 2020, but hopefully there will be some semblance of an event next year, whatever that may look like. But so Healthy Kids Day is a big one for us. We typically have 2 weeks in May where we give out about 200 free swim lessons to our community. And the only criteria, it's called Safety Around Water Week or weeks. And the only criteria to be part of those swim lessons is that you have to be a non-swimmer. And so they're outside the typical swim lessons, where you might learn rotary breathing. It's actually survival skills. And, if you were to ever find yourself in an unfortunate situation, how to help yourself and help others, for kids, we teach them what's called reach, throw, don't go. And so if you see someone that's struggling in the water, you can reach with like a pool noodle, or you can throw something in so they can get it, but you don't go in. And so that's one thing we teach. Another thing we teach is called jump, push, turn, grab. It's a technique. So the non-swimmers, they don't know how to swim. So we get to a point in the lesson where we teach them, they're comfortable jumping into the water. And then they, push off the bottom of the pool, turn and grab the side of the pool. And so it's just teaching them literally life-saving skills. So they're safe around water. And then we do dry land stuff during those weeks too. We teach them, what does a lifeguard look like? How to, this is what you should do. This is how you call 911. And a lot of times we'll have pool fencing companies come in and talk. We have a great partnership with the Drowning Prevention Coalition. And so that's a really special 2 weeks that we have in May that, again, we did not get to have this year. We were able to do some social media stuff, virtually, but it's not the same as the experience.
Sure.
After that, we have, summer camp's big. It's like our Super Bowl, making sure that, there's no, education slip in that time period, while making sure the kids are having a fun, safe summer. It's such a, I'm from the Northeast, and summer's so different here because it's hot, too hot. And, I'll never forget my first summer out here. I was like, hey, bring the kids outside, be outside more. And they're like, well, Dave, it's 120. Like, what are you? Oh, yes, that's right. I have to check myself on that. But yeah, and then 2 major things coming up for us to close out the year is we have what's called the Thanksgiving Basket Drive, which is happening in 10 days. A lot of that might be internally amongst our childcare families that are, struggling to, bills already tight, to add a special, big meal on top of that for, their family is going to be tough. So what we do is it's a program called Togetherhood in our branch. So our members actually participate and bring canned goods and things that make us Thanksgiving meal, and we're able to give it to oftentimes it's a lot of our childcare families or other members that let us know that they need support.
That's great.
That is really cool. Can outside people drop things off, or is it a member only drive?
Absolutely. And we'd be, for the next I would say 8 days here, we'd be more than welcoming to Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving foods that you find at the grocery store, like cranberries, a few boxes of mac and cheese, potatoes, mashed potatoes, stuff like that. Also, what we actually prefer would be like a gift card that we can give to the families so they can shop them. So that's one thing that we've had this year. We've had more members donating for either us to go shopping for the families or to just give it to the families. One, they don't want to be in a grocery store more times than they need to be, and two, just the passing off of goods and stuff like that. So either one is great.
Love it.
Cool.
Anyone
Is there
listening?
a specific denomination? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, Kyle. Is there a specific denomination that you prefer, like to break it up, or any amount?
Yeah, typically $100, like a gift card or something like that, would get a solid Thanksgiving meal with a turkey. So
very cool.
Great.
So, have you done much thinking about what are your hopes for and vision for your YMCA, beyond 2021? Is it continuing to do more of what you're doing now? Do you have specific thing like, hey, we'd love to also do this in our 5-year plan or anything like that? What does it look like in the future years?
Sure, yeah, no, it's a great question. I think I have like a big dream of building a new Y, way down the line. I'm talking like way down the line, and so serving the most people possible every year is my goal. Whether it's having, doubling our childcare program or having more kids in youth sports or, teaching more kids how to swim, things like that, and expanding our reach. That's probably my goal every year, is to serve the most amount of people possible. Our job at the Y is to help raise a well-adjusted adult into society. And, we do that through our programs. And so getting more kids in our programs, more adults, being able to, that might be, a widow or widower, and they don't have anyone out home, where their family that they see every day. It's really tough because the Y is a place to gather. And we're not supposed to be gathering right now. And so that's probably the rub on everything, is like, we want to do everything. We want to do it safe. And we're committed to doing those things. So 5-10 years, I'd love to get something going on, some partnership with, ASU in regards to serving young adults in some capacities. We're in a little pocket right now, and, we're on a busy street, which is Rural Road, and I don't know if we're considered South Tempe or not yet. I think that Elliott is like the marker, but I'd love to serve more of South Tempe. I'd love to serve more of the zip code we're in, and I'd love to serve. One thing that we're not doing much now is North Tempe, and it's hard to, and that's where downtown is and stuff like that, and being able to serve those populations in different capacities. Maybe not a brick and mortar place like we have now, in South Tempe, but to be able to serve, in the North area with programming is something that I'd like to do as well.
You just said something that struck a chord with me, which is and I recognize in it the issue that you have right now is that a community gathering place. The corner of that room that you've been in before, when we tore out everything in this whole floor and we're building this, it started with that and said, we're going to have this be a place where people can gather in the community and have respectful discord. And it feels like, or it has felt like, we've lost a lot of those community gathering spots and de-emphasis of importance of various institutions that we used to find much more important. And so, that's my biggest takeaway today, is a shift in perception of the YMCA from, like you said, the gym and swim, and a little bit of knowledge of some of the other things that are going on. But that very important piece and that role that you play in the community of a community gathering spot, that to me, I'm sure it provides so much value to individual people's lives, but that's giving so much back to the broader community as well, to just have access to something like that. How much time do you spend thinking about that part of it and being like that role in the community versus finding the next person who's going to be a member of your community? Or, I mean, do you ever spend time thinking about it that in that way, that you are acting as sort of this place that we don't have a lot of anymore?
Yeah, I think that's my main focus. I think my main focus is like, how do we I mean, not right now, but like
Yeah.
how do we get them how do we serve the most people? And it's not about, you know, pumping a basketball league full of kids. It's about, those kids in our basketball league might not have like a father figure, and their volunteer coach is like someone that they can look up to. And so, we do that's where the shift in the conversation comes from gym and swim to, no, we're doing amazing work. And a lot of it's volunteer led, program wise. Kids are depending on us for their meals, stuff like that. I mentioned, the widow or widower earlier. Like, we have a huge active older adult population. This is the third time I'm mentioning it in this in this radio, but it's true where they, those folks live alone, and the why is their family. And I have this conversation with anyone that works, in frontline with us, or just any employee really, because everyone's working frontline right now. But
Yeah.
it's we as we greet, members walking through the door and saying, "Hey, how's your day going?" and now taking their temperatures as they're walking through the door. But as we're greeting them, it's we are they see us every single day. A lot of them. I'm not gonna say everyone, but a lot. We are part of their routine, and just knowing that, we mean so much to them. And I'll give a little anecdote that I think says that. So we'll get cards from our members that go on vacation, and it's just bizarre to me. Like, do you ever think about your fitness facility when when you go on vacation and be like, man, I wonder how they're doing? And no, they like go get a postcard and send it to the Y when they go on vacation, and we know they're going on vacation, and we know when the date they're going to be back, and like, because they tell us for weeks coming up, and we have some members that are like, oh, is your membership director in? Like, I want to, she needs to help me with something. I was like, oh, I can help you out. She's like, no, I want to talk to your membership director, because like, she's so like, that's who helps her out every
Yeah.
day. And so we just means, and it's, from, the kids that come in our preschool program at 3 years old, to our 93 years old, we are an important part of their everyday life. And, but so I would say, to answer your question, I'd say, yeah, that's how I look at our why. And, going back to, back in London, England, that's the whole purpose of starting the why, was to help keep kids like out of trouble during the Industrial Revolution. And so George Williams started a Bible club, just to, go over, passages and stuff like that. And it was to, help those kids, stay on a good course, to open up more opportunities for them. And so not much is different from 1844 to now with the why. We do it in a little different manners, but at the same time, we don't, George Williams Bible Club study was like a teen program, and we run a teen program now. And, like, we run a teen leaders club, and so there's a lot that's the same after 175 years, and not a lot of organizations can say that.
That's amazing.
I
Um,
think it's so interesting, and I think it really plays to the. I've been reading a lot of books and different things, and I really admire leaders who've overcome adversity and all of those things. But I think the key to success in many of those people is the community that surrounds them. So just what you were saying, maybe it's one of their parents or both of their parents can't show up in a way that they really needed, but if they are supported by a community of people, their chance of success is so much higher. And so I think that's so incredible, to be able to provide that support.
I mean, what's the difference between that's how everything should be, right? I shouldn't use the word should. But still, being an entrepreneur and being like lonely, who do I talk to? I'm trying to run this thing, and who can I share this stuff with? And I mean, we don't sell square feet of space here. We
Right.
sell this engagement with a community that happens to be in this place. And so it's the same exact thing, right? Is this connectedness that you wouldn't get otherwise. And that's the real value that's there, is feeling connected to somebody beyond just you that can show you how, whether that's to really specifically survive when you're in a swimming pool, or live life and get to where you want to be and do that in a healthy, productive way.
Right. And people that walk through the Y doors, even if they're just, have their headphones on and about to go on the treadmill for 30 minutes and then leave and not talk to anyone, that's okay too. They're there to make themselves better. And that's like, generally people are in just a wonderful mood when they come into the Y, because they're there to make themselves better. Their parents are there to drop their kids off for a better environment. Whatever it is that they're, our sports participants are learning teamwork skills, and like how to win, how to lose, right? And overcoming adversity. And, every program that we have is geared towards just making a better human. So
I want to make sure we have time for a last couple of questions, which have nothing to do with anything.
Sure.
We ask everybody, and we're keeping track of our answers.
Yeah.
So first question, what is your all-time favorite book? And if it's different, what book would you recommend? What's your all-time favorite book?
Yeah, you got me going on like just empowerment stuff. Switch has been really good for me. Have you guys ever read Switch?
No.
It's just, it talks about a different way of thinking. But if you're really to ask me, it's Harry Potter 4. So
I need my daughter.
That's the goblet one.
My daughter got the whole series. I've never read a Harry Potter book. I've seen all the movies a bunch of times, but she read them, and I was like, all right, it's my turn now. Like, give me those books. So Harry Potter 4.
Those when I was growing up, those books came out every summer. We would drive down to Myrtle Beach from New York, and I would get them on tape or a CD. And so I didn't actually read them, I guess, but listen to them.
It counts.
Yes.
This is so funny and random, but so my husband's family is all from New York as well. And his family was like the one family that moved to Arizona, and the rest of his brother and sister live on the East Coast and extended family. But his aunt lives in and uncle live in Westchester County, and they just retired and they sold their house, and now they're moving to Myrtle Beach. And so you just said Myrtle Beach. So is this like the thing that New Yorkers do?
Yeah, it's like it's a 12-hour drive. It's not bad. We used to leave at 3 a.m, get to Myrtle Beach by 2 or 3 p.m. The next day. What part of Westchester County do you know? Did they live in? I'm curious.
It's like right next to White Plains.
Oh my goodness, it's like super close to me. Yeah,
Really?
Valhalla maybe, or something like that. There's a lot of towns there, but anyway, it warms my heart just hearing New York stuff. And but yeah, Myrtle Beach was an obtainable drive. Florida is like a 2-dayer, so Myrtle Beach is a 1-day.
Nice.
Okay, that helps me make sense of it. It just feels like I've lived in Arizona my whole life, so like it just felt so random. But like that's where they vacation in the summers, and then that's where they're retiring, and so it's helpful. Okay, so for my questions, I have 2. The first one is either personally or professionally, what's one lesson that you've learned from COVID that you plan to carry with you in the future?
This is probably the personal answer here. I had on May 1st, I had me and my wife welcomed our second child into life.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I got like almost 7-month-old, 8-month-old now. Wow. And first off, life with 2 kids is just like a game, a whole different ball game. And so my first daughter, super easy. She took the adventure with us moving out here, obviously, but it's been a different perspective, because you worry about things that's out of your control, and so my biggest thing I think I've taken away is like, you can only control what you can control. And that happened because, there at the time, the peak of Arizona's first, wave of this was supposed to be May 1st or April 30th or whatever it was. And so we were nervous, like, was I going to be able to go be in the room when, she was born? We had all these concerns. By the way, the hospital was like dead empty, and it was like great. And because like the maternity wing was over here, and like it was like the best experience for us. And we actually felt super safe because, we didn't know if we were going to be safe or what, but, and throughout the whole process, it was, we can only control what we can control, and make decisions based on that. So.
That's what do I keep saying? You have to try and get comfortable being uncomfortable, and you can only control what you can control. Which I hate when people tell me because it makes me have to think about that
Right.
and really get into that. But is the best advice you can give somebody right now. I mean, yeah.
And I mean, I learned that lesson as well, becoming a mom. And I think like parenthood, one of the many beautiful lessons is really like, there's so much out of your control and letting go of some of that. Because if you think about it, all the list of things you could worry about just as a parent, let alone like a leader or business person, you'd stay up all night. So letting go of some of that is good. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Kyle has 2 as well, and I have 3.
Wow.
So,
it's good times.
Yeah. But for my last question, what is one thing that most people don't know about you and they're surprised when they find out?
I don't know how to answer that. Maybe.
I'll
I'm
take
trying to
lefty.
think. I'm trying to think of something that's wowing, and I can't.
A lefty from New York.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Here we go. I grew up in New York, but lived in Boston. How about that?
There you go.
Yeah, so
That is actually very special.
Yeah.
My dad is from Boston, and my sister went to school in Boston. And so I spent my summers in Massachusetts. And I swear that was like a point of contention. Like my husband almost didn't marry me because of my New England ties.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to send this link to my my in-laws now. They're from Massachusetts. Their dog's name's Brady. And typical. And so during holidays, the Pats game's on or something like that, and I'm in the corner watching the Jets, and it's not enjoyable for me, but but it's good. It's good. Yeah.
The last Monday night game, the Jets almost beat them, right?
I know.
Almost.
Yeah, almost. I was hoping they would lose, though, because we need that number 1 pick.
My husband's a Jets fan, too, and he was screaming at the TV. I'm like, this is literally the only time I've ever heard you yell for the Patriots.
Yeah, him and I got to start an AZ Jets fan club.
Yeah.
As we're wrapping up here, can you tell people listening how to find you online, whether it's, to find you in person, to donate, to whatever? How do we find you?
I would say the best resource is valleyyMCA.org. We are one big organization, Valley, the Sun YMCA. We've been in the Valley for, 50 or 60 years at least. We started our downtown location started as a place for men after they came back from war, almost like transitional housing. Y's used to be like, it's fun to stay at the YMCA. The Y's used to be like hostels. A lot of that business, and then we've changed our model and stuff like that. But valleyyMCA.org. Find your local branch. Here in the East Valley, we have one in Tempe, Chandler, Mesa, and Ahwatukee, and so we got 4 awesome locations within 10 minutes of each other. And I would say if you're looking to donate, find the Tempe YMCA, just Google it, and there's a donate button, and all of that is appreciated.
Great. I definitely have learned so much today, and thank you, David, for being on the show today. It was a great conversation. And until next time, thank you for being an awesome part of the community.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Max 6 Community Connection radio show and podcast with your hosts, Jennifer Burwell and Kyle McIntosh. We are off to continue building better communities where people and businesses thrive, and telling the stories of capitalism as a force for good through the businesses that we serve. To be a part of the conversation, join us for a tour of the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center in Tempe, Arizona, or find us at max6.com.